Riots by some people.
No, that was that moron.
They are called by some
that was that moron, O'Brien, that comes on this channel after you, and no wonder my security detail's as big as it is. It's because of people like him.
I have to ask you to expand on that.
Well, when you spread hatred and you spread lies, you anger a lot of people, and then their feelings against you become potentially violent.
How big is your security detail?
It's big, and it's changed a lot.
Well, there's a lot to get through today. For example, have you ever had violent race riots named after you, or indeed been accused by the head of the Met of emboldening the racist thugs responsible? Has your vile and ignorant rhetoric ever helped instigate attempts to burn people alive in their beds? Have you ever cited a self-described misogynist facing rape and people trafficking charges in Romania as a trustworthy news source for events in the UK?
Today's new issue of The Spectator shows Nigel Farage's bruises, including Lee Anderson and Richard Tice, coming for a downtrodden, two-tier Kia, no doubt in free gear paid for by a billionaire. The Tory mag campaigned ferociously against Reform UK at the last election, but the penny seems to have finally dropped. That Farage's surging party is the best chance to turn Slippery Starmer into a failed one-term Prime Minister. And that's why, ahead of tomorrow's celebratory Reform UK conference in Birmingham, you are seeing the MSM rounding on Farage in spectacular fashion. So there was an astonishing interview on LBC this morning where Nigel Farage made it clear to Nick Ferrari that his security was now a real concern. Watch this.
You won't be doing physical surgeries in Clacton?
Not yet.
Do you envisage that you will eventually?
When Parliament allows me.
Why is Parliament blocking you?
Have a guess.
Have you been advised for your own security not to hold surgeries?
I would have thought that would make sense, wouldn't you?
Who was that advice come from?
Well, the Speaker's office.
Lindsay Hoyle's office.
And beneath the Speaker's office, there is a security team who give advice and say you should do some things and not do others. So we're not in a fit state to do the old-style surgeries. But you know what, David? If you've got something to say to me as a Clacton resident, actually Zoom is not the end of the world.
You won't be.
So why is Nigel Farage under so much threat? Why does he need the security detail? Why is the Speaker's office so concerned? Well, not surprisingly, I actually can't show you video of what Nigel Farage said next because LBC, the gutless Labour broadcasting company, as I call it now, didn't actually post the video. That's because he went on to blame the nasty, the fantasist supporting, the hard left loser James O'Brien for the need for that extra security protection for labelling the unrest after the Southport Massacre the Farage riots.
Well, do you want to apologise for anything you said now?
No, I wish I'd...
the Farage riots by some people.
No, that was that moron.
They are called by some
That was that moron, O'Brien, that comes on this channel after you, and no wonder my security detail's as big as it is. It's because of people like him.
I have to ask you to expand on that.
Well, when you spread hatred and you spread lies, you anger a lot of people, and then their feelings against you become potentially violent.
How big is your security detail?
It's big, and it's changed a lot since quotes like...
How shocking. How absolutely shocking that blatant lies from James O'Brien are now putting Nigel Farage's life under direct threat. And mark my words, that is what's happening. You only need to look at what's happening to Donald Trump in the US to know that. So in an extraordinary moment of live radio as the Farage interview finished, O'Brien, who clearly couldn't handle Farage spitting facts and criticising him on LBC, decided to launch another, and I would argue his most outrageous attack ever on Nigel, even though Nigel was still in the studio chair.
Very much.
Nigel Farage, thank you for appearing here on LBC and taking calls. I am done for another day. James O'Brien's the other side of the news on LBC. I'm with you tomorrow morning from 7. Meantime, stay safe.
Thank you, Nick. The time is approaching 10 o'clock and, well, there's a lot to get through today. For example, have you ever had violent race riots named after you, or indeed been accused by the head of the Met of emboldening the racist thugs responsible? Has your vile and ignorant rhetoric ever helped instigate attempts to burn people alive in their beds? Have you ever cited a self-described misogynist facing rape and people trafficking charges in Romania as a trustworthy news source for events in the UK? Or described yourself as part of a similar phenomenon to him? Have you ever helped a convicted woman beater get elected to the UK Parliament? And have any newly elected MPs spent more time in America getting binned off by Donald Trump than they have in their own constituency? And what would you call someone who answers yes to all those questions?
No, I'm actually truly disgusted. Firstly, LBC did post that clip to its social media. They're proud of it. They were boasting about it. They just ignored the fact that Farage said, actually, O'Brien acting that way is putting me under threat. Emily Maitlis has been retweeting it. They love it. They love it because they don't give a damn about Farage's safety. I find it really shocking that O'Brien could have heard Nigel talking about his actual life being at stake because of his lies and then continue to spread hateful lies that continue to make the Reform UK leader a target. But this is just what we've seen out of the playbook from the Democrats in the USA, where they continue to call Donald Trump a threat worse than the Nazis and then act all horrified when their supporters continue to try and take Donald Trump out. But LBC's wasn't the only egregious attack from the MSM. I was equally horrified today by Richard Madeley. Well, maybe not equally horrified. He's clearly not in the same category as James O'Brien. In fact, Richard Madeley is someone who I have always liked in the past. But he took the most cynical, MSM, heartless approach to Farage's support of Trump after those assassination attempts. Watch.
You're very loyal to Donald Trump. How difficult is that when he says things like Springfield cats and dogs being eaten by immigrants? And how difficult is it when you hear him saying in the last few days that he believes it was divine intervention that saved his life?
Is that what he told you on the phone?
I mean, yeah, and you spoke to him on the phone. I mean,
I did.
He can be pretty ridiculous, can't he? Isn't that hard for you to stay loyal to?
Whenever Donald Trump makes a comment that is ridiculed, it always turns out to be true. I refer that to the cats and dogs. And I find your line of attacking those who believe that there are sometimes divine interventions, that actually there are people out there that believe in God and believe that sometimes they get spared. I find that line of yours very cynical. Do you know something? I was in an aeroplane that crashed into the ground in 2010. I was smashed to pieces. I shouldn't have survived. I've no idea why I did, but who knows? Maybe even I believe that at times there is a higher intervention that can work in your favour.
I doubt that you would say that God wants you as MP for Clacton in the way that Donald Trump said that he thinks God wants him to be President of the United States. That's my point.
Our producer
Do you know what? British armies for centuries have fought saying God is on our side.
Right.
People need to believe in something. And if you were facing the prospect of walking out of your front door and someone might shoot you every day, because it's happened twice in the last 2 months, the fact that he has a religious faith maybe is what's giving him the strength to continue.
Absolutely. So what, we're now going to be pilloried in this country if we believe in divine intervention, if we believe actually that sometimes leaders are saved in miraculous ways. And I think both Donald Trump and Nigel Farage have been saved in miraculous ways. And when you are saved in miraculous ways, sometimes it changes your philosophy. Sometimes actually that's what drives you to do incredible things. But overall, I think the corrupt and the crooked and the captured MSM just exposes itself time and again, especially when it comes to Trump and Farage. Think how horrifying it is that they only have any sympathy or empathy for left-wing politicians that are targeted. So they don't have any sympathy or empathy for Nigel Farage. And I'm not going to show you it actually because it was too sickening, but I'm going to contrast it to an interview that I watched earlier this week with Diane Abbott, accused of anti-Semitism on Newsnight by Victoria Derbyshire, where she got so much sympathy for such a long time over the fact that she received death threats. Nigel Farage genuinely being threatened physically, no sympathy from the media, their mainstream media whatsoever, and that is why you are turning off from their lives in droves. Farage pushed on, though, making this dramatic announcement about giving up control of Reform UK ahead of tomorrow's conference.
I no longer need to control this party. I'm going to let go We will change the structure of the party from one limited by shares to a company limited by guarantee. And that means it's the members of Reform that will own this party. I am relinquishing control of the company and indeed of the overall control of the party. It's now going to be the members, and that I think is the right thing. And it's the right thing because this conference marks the coming of age of Reform UK, and that's something that I'm very, very excited about. There will be a board put in place with elected representation to make sure the party is being managed properly and to make sure we don't suffer from entryism. After all, we wouldn't want to be like the Labour Party when for a five or a throw, people joined and made Jeremy Corbyn their leader. So we're up and running, we're on our way. I'll have a lot more to say at the conference tomorrow. All of these changes will be subject to working with the Electoral Commission, but I can't see that being any problem at all. I'm giving up control, I'm giving it to the members. I no longer...
So sounds good, right? Well, maybe not. According to Reform's sacked former Deputy Leader Ben Habib, who has been campaigning for some time for the party to democratise.
And this is obviously the critical point. It doesn't deliver the ability to remove the leader. And I really worry about Reform UK if only a few weeks ago its chairman was making promises which he must have known are not being fulfilled. That fills me with despair about the future of Reform UK, and therefore I'm afraid the future of the movement Reform UK, Richard Tice, myself and others created, and therefore the trajectory of this country. It's that important. The Constitution had to be got right. It had to be democratising. It had to be the democratisation of the party, because if we don't get that, actually the threats facing the United Kingdom will not be able to be dealt with. And this is...
So Nigel is under all sorts of attacks from the left and from the right. This is all in one day. Everything I've shown you has happened today. But what he's trying to do is navigate a sensible path to Downing Street. With so much constant blowback, it certainly won't be easy. But let me tell you, they are scared for a very good reason, because I reckon he's the country's next Prime Minister. Now let me bring in today's superstar panel. And today I'm delighted that he's making his Outspoken debut, but someone who has appeared on my previous shows, David Atherton, a broadcaster and journalist who describes himself as a proud libertarian who backs free markets and free speech. And returning to Outspoken today, the brilliant Jasmine Birtles, the personal finance expert, author of 38 books and founder of the excellent Money Magpie. So, David, I've got to start with James O'Brien. I just thought it was the most extraordinary... I mean, look, I'm not going to lie. It was an astonishing moment of broadcasting. There they are. They despise each other in the same room, literally going for each other. But how tone deaf is James O'Brien to hear Nigel Farage say, I cannot even do an in-person meeting or surgery in Clacton because of advice from the Speaker's office regarding my security, because of the lies that have been spread by James O'Brien, and then he came on moments later and spread more lies.
Well, let me quickly say that I too have had the same treatment. There's an Islamic fundamentalist site called Five Pillars.
Yes.
And they publicly named me as one of the top 10 Islamophobes in the country. And,
I think alongside Farage, I think.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. Indeed, I think Darren Grimes was there.
Isabel Oakeshott, a few others, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So, and Five Pillars post 7th of October, there were two Jewish cultural centres they mentioned in articles. One was in Ilford, and the other one was in Hendon. It was a Jewish boys' youth club, and there was no suggestion that they deliberately incited it themselves. But the next day, there were a load of Islamic fundamentalists outside, protesting at the site. I had a visit from the police 5 months ago because we've heard you've been getting death threats, and I think the two may or may not be connected. But I can totally empathise with Nigel Farage's position at the moment. James O'Brien is a snivelling coward. He's a public school ponce. He's blocked me on Twitter. I'm not rude on Twitter.
Oh, me too.
I'm not rude. I just have a different opinion. I'm sorry,
but
James.
He can't handle a different opinion.
Yeah, I know, exactly. That's the whole point. And when people phone in who he disagrees with, he doesn't answer their questions. It's just some verbal diarrhea, word salad, trying to show how clever he is when he isn't. He's just an ignorant twit.
Jasmine, what did you think of what he had to say today? And I think, for me, it's the context in which he said it, given that you've got Nigel saying, look, I'm under threat because of O'Brien. He was laughing in Farage's face over that.
Yes, there is a connection between Farage and Trump. I mean, with both of them, they are genuinely under physical threat. With Trump, we've seen 2 assassination attempts. The second attempt was met with a sort of shrug of the shoulders by the MSM. I mean, the first one, at least they took a bit of interest. Second one, there's like, oh yeah, there's been another assassination attempt. It's an extraordinary thing. And then they make a big deal laughing about what he says about cats being sacrificed. But as Farage says, that's actually true. And with Nigel Farage, as you say, I mean, he's a human being. And we've already seen there was Joe, and I can't think of her surname, the Labour MP who was stabbed to death.
Joe Cox, yes, Joe Cox. Well, she was shot, wasn't she? Yeah.
And then we had
David
a Conservative
Amos,
MP again. He was stabbed to death. It's a real threat. It's a genuine threat. And whether it's Diane Abbott or Nigel Farage or whoever, they are in a position of importance. And although I could just scream sometimes with, some of our MPs, in fact, quite a lot of them, to be honest, they are human beings and they need to be respected and they need to be kept, they need to be protected, whether you agree with them or not. And, of course, everybody has their own opinions about it, but we need to be human about it.
Well, of course we do. But David, it's the tone, isn't it? The tone from the mainstream media regarding anything to do with Farage is one of visceral hatred. Even Nick Ferrari, who is considered to be on the right, was highly skeptical there about what Farage was saying. And Nigel is basically trying to say, look, I can't tell you why I can't do in-person surgeries in Clacton. And believe me, it's not because Nigel doesn't want to be in Clacton. He's in Clacton all the time. It's because his safety's under threat.
Sure, it is dreadful when a popular elected politician has security like that, and he's basically being bullied and made, forced to succumb to the full hatred of the mainstream establishment and the metropolitan elite. It's a dreadful situation that we're in at the moment. And believe you me, my experience is it won't be Nigel. They'll be moving on to other people soon. I'm Spartacus at the moment too.
Yeah, it's really shocking.
One thing that I'm thinking as we're all talking is that both Brexit and Trump were not supposed to happen. They're outliers. These are events that those in charge, and I don't know who I'm talking about here, this sort of the people above the WEF, but people above the UN and above our governments who seem to be, moving the pieces at the moment. They really, really didn't expect Brexit, and they really didn't expect Trump. So they're trying to just flatten the whole lot.
But it's like they'll never move on from it, right, David? They'll never move on. Yeah.
If I can very quickly add, it's the reason that the liberal press in America hates Britain so much these days. The simple reason is that, as you say, Brexit was the outlier which paved the way for Donald Trump, and we'll never be forgiven for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's absolutely true. But how do you think LBC, Jasmine, continues to let James O'Brien broadcast in this way unrestrained? Now, I'm a free speech absolutist, but you also know that I lost my mainstream media jobs for something I didn't even say. Yet there's absolutely no scrutiny of O'Brien. And if you look at his track record over the years, Jasmine, it has been absolutely appalling. He amplified those lies from Carl Beach, the paedophile and fantasist, which ruined the lives, actually, of many high-profile people. He is allowed to continue the most damaging broadcasting day to day. Now, by the way, I am not advocating for a single second that he should be taken off air, actually. I think daylight is the best disinfectant. But I do find it absolutely ironic the way that there is no scrutiny of how egregious he is, given the scrutiny on people like me on GB News. First, though, everyday subtle changes occur in our bodies, often going unnoticed. It's called inflammaging, a chronic low-grade inflammation that deteriorates our health as we get older. It's more than just a sign of aging, though. It's a key contributor to health issues like cardiovascular diseases, dementia and depression, and physical decline. It continuously weakens the body's resilience, turning minor infections severe and impacting mental health and cognitive function. Inflammaging significantly diminishes both quality of life and independence. Proper diet, exercise, and sleep can only get you so far, and that's why I take Clean Being by Verso. It contains ingredients targeted to fight off and help prevent inflammaging. Research shows that these ingredients clean out damaged cells in the body that affect healthy cells, reduce inflammation, protect against oxidative stress, and improve conditions like cardiovascular diseases and neurological disorders. After taking Clean Bean for some time, I have noticed less joint pain, increased energy, better mood, clearer skin. I can think better. I don't get sick as often. These are all benefits of reducing inflammation. Plus, as you can see, the Verso ensures transparency and quality by publishing third-party testing results for each batch they produce, so you know you're getting exactly what you paid for. Click the link in the description in YouTube or Rumble, or head over to buy.ver.so and use the coupon code Outspoken at checkout to save 15% on your first order. So to repeat, www.buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there are definitely, we have a two-tier media, if you like, probably more than that. I think with James O'Brien, he has a big following. He really does. I've met a few people who go, "Oh, James O'Brien, isn't he great?" And I'm like, "No, I really don't think so." So, fundamentally, it's money. And what it's like. People are outspoken and ridiculous and appalling. They can have a big, strong following, even if it's a following that hates him. It's still, a following. But they also, LBC is, as you've mentioned, is very much establishment. James O'Brien speaks for the establishment, like Emily Maitlis and John Sopel.
Yes, absolutely. And they're all part of a little gang. Look, I just think if James O'Brien was a decent person, he actually had a moment there. He had an opportunity in studio with Nigel to say, "Look, I completely disagree with all of your points of view. I'm going to continue to campaign against you on this show, fair enough. But I'm horrified to hear that your safety is under threat. I'm horrified to hear that the Speaker's office doesn't think it's even safe for you to be in your constituency in Clacton." And James O'Brien could have shown that he actually was a human being with a heart. I don't think he is. Because if he was a human being with a heart, that's what he would have done. Because no broadcaster ever wants to put anyone under threat, ever. I would never want anything I say to put anyone under threat. And I think James O'Brien showed the world who he was today. I felt like it was a really significant moment. But David, I want to move on to the other moment.
Sorry, go on. Yeah, go on.
No, please come.
No, very quickly. They always say that the right think the left is misguided and the left hates the right.
Yes, totally. So true. So true. But David, I want to move on to the other big issue that I discussed in the digest today, which is this debate over whether Reform UK is actually democratising. You saw Nigel Farage announce in a video clip posted on X this afternoon, "I'm giving over all control to the members." Ben Habib not convinced. Where do you stand on this one?
I suppose in a sense that's an internal matter, but funny enough, I'm at the Reform Pie conference tomorrow myself. Actually, I've got a media pass as well, so I'll do some digging for you, Dan, if I can.
Yeah, it'll be good fun, I think.
Yeah, I know. Little birdie tells me that Nigel likes to be in charge, and he's not the greatest fan of dissent, but the point is, you got to say he has been probably one of Britain's most effective politicians in the last 20, 30 years. So, you can't really take that away from him. It sounds to me as if he's come under a little bit of pressure to democratise it. I think it was a limited liability company rather than specifically a political organisation. Good, I think that should be the case. But the only thing is, when you get with smaller parties like we saw with UKIP when Nigel Farage moved on to the Brexit Party, UKIP rather fell apart with lots of infighting, and it's still going on today. So Nigel is Reform's greatest asset, and maybe they should be as kind as they can towards him as possible. So I wish Nigel well. I think at the moment, the way I see Britain at the moment, Nigel is Britain's last hope.
Well, I agree. And the thing is, Jasmine, look, Nigel is not perfect, but no human being is perfect, actually. I worked with the guy for 3 years. I consider that I know him pretty well. And trust me, out of everyone who I worked with at GB News, he was in the top 5. He's a decent guy. He's a decent human being. So while he's not perfect, I do find it a bit disturbing, Jasmine, the amount of attacks that he's receiving from the right at the moment, given I do think he is our best hope, and given I do believe he could be PM in 2029.
Well, absolutely. And, like you, I know him. I don't know him nearly as well as you do. I know him sort of well enough to know, as you say, that he's a decent guy. He's an interesting person. He's very colourful. And yes, he loves the limelight. So people who love the limelight, they tend to attract good and bad. And I think he's being attacked by the right as well as by the left because he's doing good stuff, actually. And it's quite clear that he is successful, that his party, this very new, very small party is being remarkably successful. It's hitting above its weight and they don't like it. And I do know, really, and I'm sure you do that essentially the Conservatives have been destroyed by themselves and then finished off by Reform. And once he's sorted them out, he's going for Labour. And yeah, like you say, I think it's quite possible that he could be Prime Minister at some point, because the Conservatives have utterly shot themselves in the foot. They've gone so central. They're pretty much socialist now. Labour, interestingly, has gone Tory. I mean, within the first week, they were saying, right, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut that. So it's quite funny.
There's no difference between the two of them, and that is the issue.
Absolutely.
That is the issue.
It is the issue. And as you say, and to go back again to Trump and Farage, they are the outliers, and the Uni Party, which has also, academia, the media, the civil service, pretty much all of the establishment in with it. They're all in bed with the same people. They hate these outliers because the outliers are actually being successful. They're speaking the truth, and they hate that. So I can quite see Labour and Conservative ganging up specifically against Reform, just to sort of try and destroy it before it even grows.
Well, if the Conservative Party do that would be the end of the Conservative Party.
Well, I think we might be heading that way. To be
honest.
Indeed.
I've been looking at Robert Jenrick's stuff at the moment. He looks to be fairly sound.
Yes.
Perhaps he's like Saul on the road to Damascus. Actually, there's one question I really want to ask Robert Jenrick. From his time from being an MP and being immigration minister, to what extent did his views on immigration change? Changed in that time when he became a minister.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think they have changed a lot. And I agree with you. He's the best of a bad bunch, and there's a lot of what he says that I agree with. The difference compared to Jenrick and Farage is that Farage,
country mile.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Farage believes this. He's fought for this for years, whereas Jenrick has only believed it very recently. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.